Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hard Hats and Hard Roads. Today's guest is local to our area. He has had many professional titles, from being a firefighter and being in the oil field to being an experienced motorcycle mechanic and a family man. Welcome, Jeremy Hall, and we're really happy to have you here today. We also have my wonderful co-host, local psychologist Amanda Unsworth. This story is powerful in the sense that I just need you to acknowledge the bravery and positive example Jeremy is setting forth today. It's big, and as you've mentioned to me before, basically only your wife and your counselor know your story. So I appreciate you being open with us today.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, this is going to be a big one. I'm really excited for your words of wisdom here. You might not think they are, but
Yeah, no pressure.
but they're your words are going to help people. I know it.
I hope so. That's why I've decided to come today.
And that's definitely what I was going to ask you. Why did you decide to come on this show today?
It took me a while to make the decision, but for me, I guess I've just been struggling for probably the better part of 3 decades with my mental health, and sometimes it shows, but for the most part, I think I keep it pretty well under wraps because as a Gen X baby, I was brought up in the generation where you just suck it up and quit being a baby. You just do what you got to do to get through it, which is what I did for a very long time. But for anybody else out there that's struggling in any kind of mental health regard, that whether they're my age or 15 years old or 75 years old, I would encourage them and implore them to reach out and start a dialogue with someone and get that weight off, because it's heavy.
It's heavy, and to hold that in your system for that long without sharing your story, it can weigh on you in a lot of different ways, physically too.
Yeah, to say the least, yeah.
Where did you grow up?
As a young man, young boy, I lived in and around Edmonton. My dad worked, when I was really little, I don't remember much of it, but he worked in the oil field as a truck driver, and eventually he ended up in the corrections field. He worked as a corrections officer in Fort Saskatchewan with some really good friends that he made that I still keep in contact with, actually, since my dad passed. He just passed, had a 5-year anniversary of his passing on November the 25th. But I've kept in contact with some of his old colleagues, and he had some traumatic experiences while he was in that profession, which actually, from what my mom has told me, it kind of led us to moving up to Beaver Lodge, which is where we moved to when I believe I was 10, maybe 11. And since then, I've been in the Peace Country. I grew up in Beaver Lodge, and I moved into Grand Prairie when I was 19, maybe 20. And I've been here since then. So it's been 36 years I've been in the Peace Country, almost 37.
It's safe to say this is practically your home, hey?
I consider the Peace Country my home, hands down.
You were telling me that when you were 16, you joined firefighting in Beaver Lodge.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was pretty excited. Just as a young guy growing up in Beaver Lodge, all my my circle of friends, lots of them were kind of putzes, honestly. But I was in the hockey crowd. I played hockey and lots of sports, and real into motocross and outdoor stuff mostly.
Yeah.
But a bunch of my friends that I still keep in contact with now, some of them were already on the fire department, and a couple of my dad's friends were on the fire department, and some men and women I really respected, and I thought, what a great avenue to, step into a role to give back, be able to volunteer. It was a volunteer position to give some of myself to my community, and that was instilled into me as a young person, just growing up with my family and my mom and dad. They put those types of morals into my sister and I to give when we could, and I was pretty proud. I wanted to join and get on the fire department, learn, and I was thinking about going into that profession as a career.
Yeah.
So, figured I'd be training for a couple years and do some schooling and some training through the province of Alberta, through the fire department, and then take the next steps, and which I did down the road and applied to the city of Edmonton. And yeah, it was quite a process and quite a thing.
Yeah, that is a process. But volunteered with your friends, eh?
Yeah.
And that was a good time.
Yeah, it ups and downs for sure.
Oh, yeah.
With a thing like that, I don't think they do things quite the same way as what they used to. That's for sure. With ages and what you're capable of doing at what age, because we very rapidly, after joining the fire department, there was a lot of us that got to deal with some very, very difficult things very quickly, and that was difficult. I can't go back and change anything, but if I could, I think I would probably still be on the fire department, but I would have done things a lot differently, taken my time.
Yeah. I want to know what the most challenging part of being a trainee firefighter was, especially when you were faced with catastrophic scenes. Like, what'd you do to wind down, too?
Well, again, growing up as a Gen X kid, back then when you had a traumatic incident, like a vehicle accident or a fatality, the debriefing back then after those types of incidents were pretty simple. Everybody sat around the table, and there was a lot of us, and it was basically, well, I'm good. Are you good? And everybody just said yes, and you went home. And just being really blunt and honest, I turned to drugs and alcohol at a pretty young age to try to overcome some of that stuff that was in my brain, but it sure didn't help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I struggled with that for a long time.
So when you were quite young, 16 is still a child.
Yeah.
Was it that kind of first sort of run-in with that kind of trauma? Was it shocking? Like, were you like, okay, this is real? This isn't just...
Yeah, you could say that for sure. Yeah, I recall the very first incident. I had only been on the fire department for a short period of time, and so like back in those days, we all wore pagers. And antiquated technology now. I feel like a dinosaur. But so yeah, I recall it. It was clear as it was like a week ago. The pager went off and it said MVA, motor vehicle accident, past Hythe towards BC border, and it said the mileage. It was I think 13 kilometers or something like this. And so I knew what to do because I had been there for a few days, and we kind of got a little bit of a rundown on what to do if you were first person there. So for me, I could drive kind of anything. I grew up driving a Standard when I was 10 in the country, and all those types of things, farm trucks and stuff. But so I got to the fire hall. I was first, and I got there. I pulled out the rescue unit and the fire truck, had everything running, ready to go. I was talking with the 911 dispatch in Grand Prairie on the radio, getting more details, writing information down, and it was taking a very long time for anybody to show up. And the fire chief at the time, he was there. He showed up, and there was a bit of panic to it because it was multiple minutes, and you need to respond to those types of things obviously very rapidly because seconds do really count. And in the event that we're having a shortfall of people showing up, there was an old air raid siren in Beaver Lodge, and I don't know if they still have it, but anyway, if there was something real serious, that thing just, you press the button or you flick the switch, you turn it on, and made a hell of a racket, and it got everybody's attention, and that was to let them know whatever it is that you are doing, you drop it, and you get there right now, because it's important. So, and I remember getting asked, like, we're short-handed right now, do you think you can handle this? I'm 16, I have no idea, never done this before. And the answer was, okay, let's roll.
Yeah.
So we rolled, and it was tough. I remember getting back. It was a bad vehicle accident. There was a fatality. If I remember that portion right, a woman had a major medical event while she was driving and crossed the center lane, had a head-on collision with another vehicle. And I remember getting to the vehicle with the woman who was very, very clearly deceased, not wearing a seatbelt. probably why I wear a seatbelt everywhere I go today, honestly. I never used to, but I sure do now. I don't really feel like going into those details specifically, but it was traumatic. And at that age and with that level of experience, which was virtually none, I just did exactly what I was told, and I knew how important that was. So, I followed all the directions to a T. And listening to my mentors and the men that I really respect. Every time I arrived on a really bad scene, or whether it be on the fire department or elsewhere, I always equate it to sitting down in a movie theater. That really loud noise. It goes, and it's like a whole lot of bass, and it brings your attention to the screen. Just that feeling, it feels like you're getting centered. And for me, that was something that's what I experienced. I guess everything around me gets a little more quiet. I get very, very focused on the task at hand, and it's like instantly knowing what steps to follow and what needs to be done next, and to ensure that you're doing the absolute best that you can. And again, that was instilled in me during my training, leaders on that fire department. And I'm so thankful that I was able to learn that from those people. It was a gift, really.
I was just going to say that sounds like a gift to be able to pinpoint your vision and your mind to the task at hand. Not everyone can do that. That's
might
for sure.
Be a little bit part of the 4 letters that I have at the end of my name, which is probably ADHD.
Well,
I get hyperfixated on things at times, and sometimes that's not such a bad thing.
That's right. That's right. Our ADHDs and how it feels when we go through these intense moments in life.
We had the debriefing, and again, it was, are you good? Yep, are you good? And everybody went around the table, and that was that. And I walked home, and I remember trying to be tough all the way home. And when I got home, I wasn't so tough anymore,
It's a lot to process on your walk home after your first big day. Like, I guess at the time, it probably felt like loss of strength by breaking down, but now we know that that's truly a sign of strength to let things out. And
yeah, it's taken a long time to get to that. It's still hard to think about sometimes.
100%, buddy. So you were talking about your team, and in emergencies, how connected were you guys? Like, what was the vibe?
We knew what each other were thinking. Before you could even say something or you needed something, everybody just knew. We all trained together. We worked together. So yeah, like we were very intuitive with each other's mode of thinking, because we all learned from the same people. And we were chastised if you got out of line. And if you got off base, you were corrected quickly, and because you needed to be. It's a very serious thing. So yeah, I guess to those people that I worked with on that fire department, there's a connection there still. Like I've reached out to some folks and talked to them about the trauma that we all experience at such a young age. And I'm not the only one feeling this powerfully about it. It's been a real challenge throughout my life, and it's caused a lot of hardships for myself and my relationships with those around me, like my wife and my parents. And sometimes I struggle, and sometimes when I do, I tend to just pull in and disappear and become a ghost, and it's not out of disrespect for anyone. It's just something I need to do in order to keep moving forward, I guess.
Reflect and...
Yeah.
Sometimes trauma does that to us. It just removes our ability to connect, and connection is everything.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's it's only been in the last probably 5 years or so, maybe a little longer, that I actually had started talking to a counselor, and so that did do some help. We did some work with EMDR, which I'd never heard of. And again, I guess people can Google that. Seems so weird to me. I'm a tattooed biker, kind of a redneck a little bit, and she started explaining this EMDR stuff to me, and I'm like, okay,
what is that?
all right,
Okay, you flash your lights, lady.
Let's
Prove it.
go in here, space cadet. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I did a little research on it and watched some videos and stuff, and I was like, it's super weird, but lots of stuff in this world is super weird, but sometimes you need to just have an open mind, especially when you're struggling, and you need to just follow the 4 keywords to success, which are shut the up, we'll say that, and just try it. And I did, and I'm sure glad I did.
That's awesome.
I never actually used to be able to drive comfortably to Dawson Creek, as the roadways that we used to maintain on the fire department started at Wembley and went all the way to the BC border and much other territory, but that was the main core. And just driving to and from that stretch of road, it was traumatizing just doing it. You could have visual impacts as you're going past. I could still drive through there today and pinpoint within 5 feet of, where we had to go deal with fatalities and severely injured people and all of those things. Some turned out amazing, and I'm super proud of those instances, and it's something I always carry with me. It's a level of pride that you obtain as being a firefighter and helping people on that high of a level. But there's also some really low points too, where you talk to someone and hold their hand while they die. It's harsh, incredibly harsh.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. And that's a huge experience to have, and a very difficult one to talk about with other people who don't have any reference.
Yeah, it really is. It's, a lot of people, I guess I've always said that being a firefighter is a relatively thankless job. So I try to go out of my way. If, I do have some friends in my circle that are firefighters from Fort McMurray, from Grand Prairie. Some pretty good friends made over the years. And the camaraderie and stuff that goes along with being a firefighter, whether you're actively doing it or not, is pretty impressive. And it's been a helping hand throughout the years. Yeah.
Lifelong brotherhood, almost, eh?
It is. It's a bonding.
Yeah. That's an understatement for sure. I know men and women that would drop everything they're doing in their life to go and help someone in the event it was needed, whether it was, say it was me and called someone and said, hey, I'm struggling, I need some help. Or if it was just anybody else in need, those people, whether they're on the fire department or not anymore, it seems like there's just a type of person that does those types of jobs. And they really are the kind of people that will run into a burning building when others are running out, and something to be proud about.
100%.
Yeah, and having that type of mentality is definitely, I feel like it has to do with being raised to pay it forward, that's for sure. It has, for me, that's my perspective, because that's how I was raised too.
Yeah.
And it just, the way you look at other people in your life, you just want to help. It's not really people pleasing, you just want to help.
Yeah, and that's well put. It's the way I was brought up by my parents, who were both very humble people, and it's very simple. You don't judge someone based off their skin color or their religion or anything. In very plain English, and this is the way my dad used to say it, and excuse my language up front, but he used to say, you judge someone whether or not they're an asshole, and that's it. You don't have to judge them on anything else. If they're a good person and they treat you well, what else matters? Nothing. It really doesn't.
That's very true.
I try to live by that.
So with having ADHD, how does that serve as a strength in achieving success across many different skills and challenges that you've had to endure in life?
There are times when it is so incredibly frustrating. It's hard to group everything together. It's hard to associate. You know where your end of your task is going to take you, and that should be a linear path. But for me, sometimes it's a great big long squiggly line, and it takes me a lot longer to get there at times. But there are other times where if I take a very keen interest in something, I will hyperfixate on it so intensely that people best not get in my way. I'm quite blunt at times, and it's it's easy to latch onto specific things that I really appreciate a lot, and develop my skill set with that particular thing. The last 6 years of my life, it's been snowmobiling in the mountains, and I love it for a whole lot of different reasons. Number one, it's very physical. Number two, I find that it completely eliminates all of the noise. Just, you get a lot of, I just call it chatter. It's hard to sometimes focus your brain on something. And for me, snowmobiling takes up all of my brain space, and it also takes me to the places where I can find some very serious serenity and peace.
That's
You know,
awesome.
sitting on top of a mountain at 6:30 in the morning waiting for the sun to come up.
Yeah.
And watching the sun come up through the Rockies is a pretty special thing. And I just brought my sled camp out the other day, and I am over the moon excited to get out there.
All the snow
Can't
is
wait to
exciting
get
for
out
you.
on the sled, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully your days off are soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too.
Yeah.
ADHD brains are cool brains, and it's often we have to talk about the wiggly lines that we have to meander through life. But in helping fields, that is our superpower, our ability to hone in on a very specific thing that we're trying to do. And when we have adrenaline or we have that extra something from the environment, we are able to hold our focus and our attention at a very high level. And so often responders we are drawn to those types of fields. We like a little bit of the unknown, not knowing what you're going to do every day, and especially if we don't have to sit in an office to do it.
Yeah, I would say that I guess it's a blessing and a curse. The curse part of it is the squiggly line part. It's the frustration that comes with not being able to accomplish what you want in a set time frame. It's the mess that I leave in my wake that I have a hell of a time trying to clean up, and whether it be working in my garage or it's paperwork for our business, it's thank God for my wife who is able to take the squiggly lines and condense it all and find that linear path again
that's
somehow.
awesome.
God bless her, but she is a saint, that is for sure.
Yeah, I definitely relate to the squiggly lines. Like, if there's something you're not interested in, but you have to do, sometimes you're like,
Yeah.
like that's something you really don't want to do, and it kind of like affects you a little bit.
Well, the blessing part of it, though, it's not always a downside. And I think for those who suffer with ADHD, the one thing I could say about it is use it as your superpower. Use it as a tool. Figure out what it is that works in that regard for you. Not everything will work. There are huge frustrations and setbacks and, time-consuming things that are infuriating at times. I think there's ways to figure out how it can be beneficial in your life, at least for a portion of it. And in that regard, I see it as a bit of a silver lining.
Absolutely.
There's some different paths you can go down.
100%.
Yeah.
I always say it's a disability of capitalism.
Yeah,
If I didn't have to waste my time making money, I could do so many fun things with my day.
Oh, if I won the lotto, man, oh man, I'd probably make some international news with the cool stuff I'd be able to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I caught myself, not long after leaving the fire department, just really realizing what it was that I was struggling with. And, I always kind of equate substance abuse in many people, not just me. And, I've read a lot about psychology and stuff. Maybe you can reiterate or correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those that suffer with mental health oftentimes will self-medicate. And I think that alcohol is a tool, a bad one. And, I went down a pretty dark path with drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine for a while. And as a younger guy, that was just speed, right? You just did what you did, and it's usually mixed in with something that you're having anyway. And so, yeah, I struggled with that stuff for a very long time. And, I got sober 6.5 years ago on May the 7th on my friend's 60th birthday. Not for any particular reason, but we started a 90-day challenge. There was a few of us. One of them realized it was motorcycle season, and he lasted about 3 days. That was about that. He liked his cold beer sitting outside and enjoying all that, which is fine. I don't hold that against anyone. But
Yeah.
For me, I decided I was going to take it serious, and I was honestly having health problems. I have something called peripheral neuropathy, which is often equated to diabetes or severe alcohol abuse, which I wouldn't have called myself a severe alcoholic. I would certainly call myself an alcoholic, but I didn't go twist the lid off a bottle of Jack Daniels and drink one every day. I drank a lot of beer, but it was every day. And So I thought maybe it was from that, but after some discussion with the doctor and stuff, it was likely due to my fractured back when I was 10 years old, racing motocross and being dumb generally, mixed in with some alcohol abuse of sorts. And so it's like lower extremities, severe tingling, and it's like this internal itching feeling that is atrocious. It's terrible. But that was getting so bad, it was almost unbearable. So that was a big factor. But, once I surpassed I remember it was about 60 days, and that was subsiding a bit, and my life started getting a little better, and I started losing weight, and, there was a lot of other benefits that started to present themselves. And after the day 90, I had committed already to myself that I would stay sober, not just for the health benefits, but to try to repair the traumas and the nonsense that I put my wife through and my family through, like drinking and not being there for so many things. There was always an excuse to be over here or over there drinking or whatever and missing family functions. And I missed a lot of my children growing up, which is the hardest part for me. You can't get that back.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point of, like, addictions work. That's why people do them. They're purposeful as a tool to get through the things they're dealing with. And I think we often forget that part of the person. That, like, the healing journey needed to happen much before the addiction started. And I think that's important for people to remember too, that yes, it is a tool. It's one that comes with high cost, and it's not a long-term one. And so you got to have more tools in your toolbox.
I said my wife is a saint before, and I really meant it, because without her, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead. Guaranteed. 100% guaranteed. I know I would be. I was going down a pretty dark path, I've ridden in motorcycle clubs, which to me, some of the best people I've met in my entire life from the motorcycle community that I love. And they have been supportive of and with me over the years, and I've expressed some of the things that I deal with to some of them, not all of them, that's for sure. But the ones that I appreciate, they know I'm sober, and they don't mess with that. They don't ask why. They can appreciate it, and they understand, and they respect it. And that means a lot. I still find it so stupid that alcohol is the one drug, and let's make no mistake here, alcohol is a drug. It's just a socially acceptable one.
Yep.
With alcohol, it's a different animal, and it's an easy one to fall down that rabbit hole with. And it's a slippery slope. To me, alcohol is the gateway drug to all the other drugs, because the only thing alcohol ever did for me was numb my brain and lead to some really shitty decision-making processes.
Yes.
If anybody listening or watching this podcast, if I could say one thing, it would be very simple. If you have thought about getting sober because of the stupid that's happening in your life, please do it. Reach out, get help. Talk to me, talk to your mom, talk to somebody, but do it. It is the best decision that I have made for myself and my family, hands down, ever.
So it's safe to say that quitting drinking and drugs was definitely your own decision to stop making bad decisions, but at the same time, you wanted to have a better life with your family.
I wish I would have made the decision so much sooner. You can't change what you've done in the past, but you can certainly reflect on it, and you can make better decisions going forward, because the person you were yesterday doesn't have to be the person you are today. And that's an important lesson I learned over the years, is that you can recreate yourself as many times as it takes in order to find the right version of you that is best for you and those around you. I guess I really did do it for medical reasons first, but after I realized the difference that it was making, not just in my life, but in those people that I love around me, and being part of the family functions and the turkey dinners, and being able to still catch a good portion of my kids growing up, You know, I know a lot of people who struggle with alcohol or other substances. You know, if you got kids, you are missing the most important years, not of just their lives, but your own. You can't get that time back. You know, when you can make positive changes that give you your time back, to me, that is the most crucial thing that you can give the people you love is your time.
It's that connection building.
Yeah,
Just being there.
Yeah, it's powerful.
it is.
And from making those important decisions and getting sober, you were able to actually save the life of a family member.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
He was a motorcycle club member from the 60s and 70s. He was a rough guy, you know, but a very kind-hearted guy too.
Yeah.
He was riding his motorcycle in Edmonton. He was going around a traffic circle, and he was cut off by a lady in a station wagon, and it almost tore his leg off. Lost a lot of blood, and when they got to the hospital, he had lost so much that he required a blood transfusion.
Yeah.
And he was unfortunately part of that whole tainted blood scandal that we had here in Canada during that time frame, and he contracted hepatitis C. So he struggled with that for so long. That was May the 20th of 2005. I'll never forget it. He was in the hospital already on his deathbed, literally. He didn't have long to go. And I remember I was working out in the oil field at the time, and I called my mom, and I said, "Hey, what blood type am I?" And she goes, "I'm pretty sure you're O positive." I'm like, "Well, pretty sure or actually sure?" Two different things, right?
It's a big difference.
Yeah, so she did a little research, and I went and got a quick blood test and found out that I was O positive. So, of course, that's, for those that don't know, you're allowed to be basically a universal donor.
I was going to say,
with
we
that
can have
blood
all
type.
your organs.
Yeah, well, I am a donor. Probably. Yeah, no, I'm going to leave that joke out of here. But, anyway, so I remember calling the University of Alberta transplant team, and I was, oh man, how old was I? I think I was 27, if I remember right. And I called them, and I'm always very direct and very blunt. My friends will attest to it. But I called them and I said, "Hi, my name's Jeremy Hall. My uncle Rick is in your transplant ICU place right now on his deathbed. I'll be there in about 4.5 hours, so get ready." And I pretty much hung up the phone, and that was that. I was going, and I did. I got there not long after. Little did I know you needed to have meetings with psychologists, and you need to have I knew you had to have MRIs and stuff like that. But it wasn't that much longer. You know, they realized that I really meant it, and I was not playing. It was a few days later, probably a week or so, got the authorization, everything is a match, we're good to go. And we had that surgery started early in the morning. I think I was there at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And my girlfriend at the time, she was quite worried. And my family was there, my mom and my aunt and some other family members, to basically there for moral support. And 11.5-hour surgery later, we were done. Had some complications after. I got real sick. Didn't do very well there for a couple of days. But I got to see him 2 or 3 days later. I got to walk down and go see him. Before the surgery, he was yellow, like jaundiced, terribly. And he looked just horrific, honestly. And when I saw him, all of his color was back, and he was like super excited. So was I to see that. You know, it's when fruits of your labor or fruits of your passion to help someone, to be able to see that result was amazing. And he got another 17 years of life after that. He passed away from cancer, actually, but got an extra 17 years out of it.
Wow.
I still have the big nasty scar to show for that one, but it's a scar I wear with pride. And when you walk into the Eastlink Center here in Grand Prairie as a tattooed up guy like myself, and you have scars all over you like that one, people wonder what the hell you've been up to in your life. I can say that for sure.
The fun guy at the party.
Oh, yeah. I used to be, for sure, yeah.
So I'm very proud of you for going through all those. Well, you pretty much did all that realization on your own before you even got help. So that's huge. Like, not a lot of people can or have that personal strength to figure that out about themselves. Self-reflect.
I was diagnosed a number of years ago with PTSD, and that's the toughest one that I deal with by a mile. There are others who struggle with their mental health in so many aspects, and they need someone to talk to, but they can't go to a counselor, or they don't want to talk to these people. So my garage was always the same rule. What happens in this garage stays in this garage, because it goes one ear and it goes nowhere after that, other than just in the memory banks. And it's allowed someone to remove some of their weight, which I have bared, I guess. I don't mind, I don't seem to mind taking it on, some of it at least. But sometimes, you combine the passion to help people with ADHD and a little PTSD mixed in there. Sometimes it does become personal, and it's hard to shake that off. So, but when people don't have anybody else to talk to, I am 100% okay with being that shoulder to lean or cry on, because I would rather bear the weight of somebody's emotions versus bearing the weight of their casket.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's just something that I've always felt strongly about.
Yeah, I've been taking that actually into my recent personal life. The biggest thing nowadays is people don't keep things to themselves. It's the thing. Like, you can't have confidence in people anymore. So it's nice. I've always wanted to be that person. So if you were to vent to me, it's not going anywhere.
It's a really good reason why I'm very proud to consider myself an upstanding member of the motorcycle community, because those people, whether it be, the biggest of the motorcycle clubs or the smallest, there's a very similar like-mindedness to so many of the people that I call brothers and sisters, because they care for one another. Like, when stuff gets really sideways, the first people who are usually out there doing fundraising or just doing really something positive to help people is the motorcycle community. They're not the only ones, but they're definitely one of the first, and they ought to be proud of that. And it's something I've always been proud about in the biker community. We've done a lot of things that have made the news in a good, positive fashion. I always bring up the motorcycle community when it comes to the things I'm proud of the most, because, like, I was up in Fort McMurray for the first 11 days of that fire, and I'll never forget it. And I didn't have a plan. I had the no plan.
I feel like that was everyone's plan at the time.
I shut down my business, and I called up one of my best friends. He's one of the best people I know. Will Skinner's his name, and he's just one of the best people, the kindest-hearted men I've ever known, really. And I said, bro, I'm heading to Fort Mac. I got my flat deck full of gear. I got a trailer with a fuel skid. I got generators. Like, let's roll. And he's like, I'm in. I'm like, I knew you would be. That's why I called him.
Yeah.
And so we just put some posts on social media. And in a very, very short period of time, I completely filled the deck of my truck. I had people reaching out in Facebook Messenger from High Prairie. They made me stop in High Prairie so they could put fuel in my truck and make sure they did something to pitch in. And we met another lady from Slave Lake who went through all the fires and stuff like that. She struggled with cancer, and she made sure she filled coolers filled with subs and sandwiches and water and just stuff for these firefighters, because that was at the point where they had nothing. So yeah, like, we were rolling up there. I remember seeing the sun coming up, getting close to Fort McMurray, watching that column of smoke from such a long ways away, and I just, everything was flooding back to me real fast. And I remember getting to the RCMP check stop, and he's like, "Where do you think you're going?" I'm like,
You're going the wrong
I'm
way.
a level 1001 firefighter, and I'm going that way. I've got this on the back of my truck, and I said, I've got multiple people that you can call within Fort McMurray, a couple of guys on the fire department. They want me there, trust me. So he just went, I don't have the time for this. He's just like, get going. I'm like, yes, sir, see you later. I wasn't on the ground for more than half an hour, and I was in a set of bunker gear and headed for the fires. And we went up to the very biggest subdivision that was having a problem at the time, was Abasand. And it was an eye-opener, to say the very, very least.
So can you describe the feeling of saving homes, even if it means the difficult decisions to destroy others?
It certainly wasn't my decision, but when I first got to Fort McMurray, one of the guys that I had been speaking to on the fire department there that knew I was coming, he knew I was previously, no longer on the department or in the union of any kind, but he knew I had some training, and he had made that known to one of the captains that was helping coordinate everything. And I wasn't boots on the ground for more than half an hour, and I remember him coming up, and he went, "You're the biker firefighter guy." And I was like, "I guess, why?" And he goes, Mark told me that you'd be here, and he goes, bunker gear's over there, and you're going to be in that 8-wheeled unit. It was a big oil field firefighting thing that the oil sands had up there. It's one of those big 8-wheel drive off-road fire trucks. So off we went, and because I wasn't a part of that union, I got to do a few things that maybe some others weren't able to.
Yep.
That being said, we needed a piece of heavy equipment, and we needed an excavator. It was a lot. Like, remember the whole THX movie sound? Everything just came into the center again, and I said, we need an excavator. And he's like, you know how to run one? I said, yes, sir. And he goes, okay. So we're on our way up there, and here was a great big 450 Hitachi sitting there. I said, well, there's two ways this is going to go. I'm going to look in all of the regular spots that I would normally hide a key on a piece of equipment, and if that doesn't work, I need a flathead screwdriver and a 5-pound dead blow hammer. So
Yeah.
a few minutes later, the dead blow hammer and a screwdriver, we got it started. And I remember taking that piece of equipment, and it was about 3 or 4 blocks that I had to take that piece of equipment to the subdivision. There were some townhouses or row houses, whatever you want to call them. But I remember on the way there, running that piece of equipment, my nerves were getting the better of me. And I remember having the very brief thought about, man, this is going to be cool. I didn't even barely get the words out of my mouth, and I realized what I was about to do, and that was tearing people's homes down, and that set in pretty quickly. So yeah, I remember getting that equipment there, and the plan is that the fire was raging just a little ways away, and we needed to knock down basically a whole entire complex of buildings as a fire break. And it was kind of one of those scenarios where it's you destroy a few to save many. Mm-hmm. Starting to tear down these properties, and it was going fine, and it was making some good progress, and there was another equipment operator there that was clearly more skilled at running an excavator than I was. He's dismantling these things like a real pro, and I was basically smash and stack. But we were making progress, and I remember near the end, one of the last houses, it was a corner unit, and I was tearing it apart from the top down and just pulling things away. And I remember just taking a quick pause, and it was a little girl's room, and her name was Rebecca, because there was a picture on the door. I've got a picture of it on my phone. I'll show you after we're done. But it was very difficult. I just had a very sudden and very powerful realization that I'm tearing people's lives apart right now, and it was very emotional at the time, and it still is at times. I think I've mostly worked through it. To see a whole bedroom filled with little girl stuff, and I had little girls at home myself, and it just started really getting to me. And it was, I think, the next day I had to go out to the main entryway into Fort McMurray where the RCMP had their check stop or whatever you want to call it set up, the security area. Mm-hmm. And all the news people were there. One of the guys there, he kind of caught me and asked me if I would do an interview, which I agreed, because I thought it was important for people to know what was going on. And it ended up being on the national news. And it was hard. Like, I remember him asking me what it was like, and I started explaining it, and I had a hard time maintaining my composure, because that came into my mind, and I started describing that scene, and it was just so hard. It was such a powerful and vivid image that it's burned into my brain. But the positive things that I gained out of it were connections with people.
So with the combination of firefighting and community involvement and overcoming personal struggles, safe to say that's defined who you are today, hey? I'd like to ask, what advice would you give someone that's struggling to overcome adversity and to find their path?
Be bold.
Be bold.
Don't back down. Like, always one foot after the other. And just don't give up. Put a plan together that makes sense to you and execute that plan no matter the cost. Mm-hmm. And you need support in some places in order to do it. So get the help you need.
Connection.
And it only starts by asking.
And asking again, and then asking again.
Yep.
And you need to match with the person that you're asking for help with.
Yeah,
yes.
It can be a challenge, but you have to start somewhere. It took me a very, very long time. If I could really say one thing to anyone who's struggling, mm-hmm. Take the steps now. Don't wait nearly 30 years like I did.
And it's so worth it. Like it is. It's not easy. It's not. But
Hardest thing I've ever done. I do really feel confident that there are others who have been through similar things that I have, that could maybe take something out of this podcast and maybe make a step forward in the right direction. Maybe it saves a life. That's why I'm here. Because if it saves even just one or helps someone over the edge to make the decision to go and get the help they need, every ounce of the time that I have spent here today and in the last weeks preparing for it and overthinking it to death have been worth it.
I'm so glad you feel that way, man. You being here today and being open and honest is really big, and I know that was huge for you, and it was a lot to process and to prepare for this interview, but you've done wonderfully, and I feel like this story is going to save a life, and if anything, I just want someone to relate and to go and make that step to get help. And I just want to thank you again for coming on this show and
For trusting us with your
Yes.
very cool stories.
exactly.
There's some stories that I haven't shared, but
Season 2.
Season 2.
perhaps.
So to wrap up, I just want to say if anyone is in need of immediate assistance, please call 911. And if anyone needs to speak to someone, 988 is also a really good resource. And never be ashamed of wanting to step up and ask for help. And I appreciate you guys listening to this episode today. Thank you.
You don't hear anybody going, "Hey, bro, do you want to swing over and do some meth tonight?"
Right?
you
Stop
know,
by after work.
Yeah, it's you don't do that. But